So good morning,
All
Jan.
right. Hi.
What's we doing today?
Today we're in A Course in Miracles text study. We're using the Foundation for Inner Peace version, and we are in Chapter 7, Section 9. We're making progress. The Extension of the Kingdom. So let's get started on this reading. And please bring up your questions, comments, reservations, whatever, so we can take it in to the extent that we can. Connie, would you like to start, please?
Sure. The extension of the kingdom. Only you can limit your creative power, but God wills to release it. He no more wills you to deprive yourself of your creations than he wills you to deprive himself of his. Do not withhold your gifts to the sonship, or you withhold yourself from God. Selfishness is of the ego, but self-fullness is of spirit, because that is how God created it. The Holy Spirit is in the part of the mind that lies between the ego and the spirit, mediating between them always in favor of the spirit. To the ego, this is partiality, and it responds as if it were being sided against. To spirit, this is truth, because it knows its fullness and cannot conceive of any part from which it is excluded. Wow, that sentence about Holy Spirit is part of the mind that lies between the ego and the spirit, mediating between them, always in favor of the spirit. That's really awesome. I don't remember having read that before. And yet I've experienced that. Like being, when I'm in my right mind, it's like I can, it's kind of that time when I know what's not real and what's real, like that my ego's just saying all this stuff, but that's not where it's at.
Yeah.
And then I go to the Holy Spirit. It's like I get there faster. It's I can shut off ego faster when I go to the Holy Spirit, but I've never visualized it. It's funny you say this is more abstract. Actually, for me, that's very concrete, because I'm more abstract, and so that's funny.
Anybody else have a sentence or a concept from that paragraph that really stood out for you?
I have a question. We were just reading in our earlier class today something, I can't remember what section, but it was that the Holy Spirit does not understand the ego, but basically because it's like, it's insane. I don't need to understand it. Move along, please. So
Right.
When we talk about it being a mediator, it's just trying to help us see things in the right mind. Like no one needs to understand the insanity that we're in.
Right.
And instead it just tries to guide us to right perception, because that's the first step, right? Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
This is it really is meant to be very, very practical. And we do it all the time. So one of the classic things about discrimination is you see a stick in water and the stick looks bent, but it's not bent. And there's all kinds of optical illusions like that. Like we just see lines and points and things, but we're the ones who make that seem to have the reality.
Right.
So that's why we can have this holy instant where my mind changes.
Right. Yeah, and things do change. So this past week I had a situation. I don't need to tell you what it was. It was about the computer, right? And I was so frustrated, and it had been going on for a long time. And I finally said, I'm giving this up to Holy Spirit, even though it seemed to be like, this is really important. This has to do with our students and people who want to learn the course, and I got to do it. And my frustration is justified and all of that. And I was like, nope. If I'm frustrated, if I'm angry, if I'm upset in any way, that's ego. Forget about it. I'm giving this to the Holy Spirit to take care of. Here it is, Holy Spirit, my thoughts, the situation, the whole deal. I'm going to just walk on in peace. And within 1 minute, Timothy came in and solved it. Okay.
But we do need people in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we need people to hear our story,
Yeah.
whatever it is that we're saying.
Yeah.
And when they get stuck in it, we can remind them of the truth of themselves.
And we do it silently. We don't have to say, you are the Holy Son of God. We just know it. Yeah.
That
That's,
line about selfishness is of the ego. That's what, you know, when you described everything you were thinking, all ego, it gets hooked. That's selfishness. It's all about the ego. Get hooked, get hooked. And it's like, that's where the Holy Spirit, I think,
Yeah.
helps, because it can have us see, as Laura said,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right-minded.
Yeah.
Eric, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm still stuck on sentence 5, actually. The Holy Spirit is the part of the mind that lies between the ego and the spirit. Now I'm thinking, hang on, isn't the Holy Spirit, is that not the spirit? It's something
It
else
is.
as well.
It is.
It's like, oh, hang on, am I understanding it wrong?
You know that as I mentioned before, in the clarification of terms, I think it's the first one, mind and spirit, that helps. And it also shows us that he's got to use terms that as if it's real, you know, as if our ego thinking is part of our mind, even though it's not. And it's the same with the term you in the course. Sometimes he says, you know, you think that you're full of guilt, like a poisonous snake. And sometimes he talks about you as the one Holy Son of God. The terms, you know, it says words are not precise. So, you know, don't try to nail it down.
It's just that it seems to be talking about 3 things here, when I thought there was only 2 things.
Go
Yeah.
ahead and explain that, Eric.
Well, you've got the ego and Holy Spirit, or spirit, whichever name you give it. But this is saying you've got ego on one side, you've got spirit on the other side, and Holy Spirit's in the middle,
Yeah.
Sort of negotiating between the 2.
Yeah.
And as somebody's already said, that you don't need to negotiate with the ego, because it's an illusion.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. It's not really not, that's why just saying no to it is so important.
Yeah.
You know, one of the most profound things for me about the Course is, one, that it's making this really profound metaphysical assertion that what's unreal does not exist.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a very profound sort of thing. But what it says about the Holy Spirit, that's the Trinity, right? And the Course is very clear that the home of the Holy Spirit is the Christ within you. That's the home of the Holy Spirit. It exists within your true self.
Yeah.
And the Holy Spirit has both knowledge and the perceptual awareness of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's miraculous, because it's hard for us to conceive of this fact that who we really are has not changed and is loving right now.
That's what this section is talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that we can't understand it, but what we can do is just say, I don't like what I'm experiencing.
Right.
This is not keeping me happy and I'm not in peace. And as soon as we can give the ego the unreality it deserves, then we will have that peace.
Right. So when you're in that situation, I don't like how I feel.
Yeah.
And we recognize that there's another part of our mind
Uh-huh.
where the Holy Spirit abides. That's what it's talking about in that sentence. It's not even real, but that's how it appears to us while we're experiencing the ego. It appears to us that we have an ego and we have a higher mind where the Holy Spirit can help us choose that. In reality, go ahead.
You've described the Holy Spirit as having knowledge and perceptual awareness. So maybe that's the two elements to it. The knowledge is the spirit, pure spirit.
Yes.
And then the perceptual awareness is the Holy Spirit, which can see this delusionary ego.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Oh, good.
In fact, I think that's a section coming up, the totality. What does it say? The Holy Spirit can perceive totally. So the Holy Spirit perceives the oneness of us. And that's what we can't see. When I think I'm separate from you and you're causing me to experience that, that's what the Holy Spirit mediates between and says, you are spirit.
Right.
You can do this. You can forgive. You can overlook this. And we really couldn't overlook this world. If we really were just an ego and body, this would have to be real.
What a shame that would be.
Yeah. Anyways, that was really good comments on this section.
Let's have Eric read too, but I think we need to stop before sentence 5 and chew on this a little bit before we go on to the next part of the paragraph.
That's good. But is there any further comments about this first paragraph?
Okay.
Go ahead, Eric.
Spirit knows that the awareness of all its brothers is included in its own, as it is included in God. The power of the whole sonship and of its creator is therefore Spirit's own fullness, rendering its creations equally whole and equal in perfection. The ego cannot prevail against the totality that includes God, and any totality must include God. Everything he created is given all his power because it is part of him and shares his being with him. I'm reading 5 as well.
Now, why don't you see what you want to comment on in that amount? There's a
Not
lot
sure.
there.
There's a lot of words, but
Yeah.
the first line struck me actually. Spirit knows that the awareness of all its brothers is included in its own, as it is included in God.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say about it, but it feels important.
Yeah. Well, it sounds to me like it's saying that our true mind knows that everyone is in that mind, that we are one spirit, one being.
In fact, to move from the theoretical to the practical, he actually says in 21, which is a lot about recovering your sane thinking. Like it's insane to think we left God. I mean, how could you really leave God?
Yeah.
But it just says in that insanity, there is a part of your mind that knows right now that you are one with everything. And that it knows that the Holy Spirit could not have come into your relationships and changed the goal to truth unless you had accepted that with him. So there's a practical part of our mind that knows right now, I am one with this. And through forgiveness, I can be aware that I'm one with it.
So we're one with every other person, and that is the basis of forgiveness.
That's right. And that's why he's saying in that without extension, there is no love. And that first sentence is really sort of imitating that.
Right.
Like, I have this awareness that I am one with you.
Mhm.
Like we share, like we were talking about this morning, the forms of our upsets may be very, very different, you
Mhm.
know,
Right.
depending upon our situations. But the content of
Right.
the answer is always the same.
Right.
Forgive and this will disappear.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
he's just saying this will disappear. You can recover your peace and your love and joy at any instant.
Thank God. You want to continue with that paragraph there?
Sure. Creating is the opposite of loss, as blessing is the opposite of sacrifice. Being must be extended. That is how it retains the knowledge of itself. Spirit yearns to share its being as its creator did. Created by sharing, its will is to create. It does not wish to contain God, but wills to extend his being. So it's not about containing what you've got, it's about extending it, isn't it? That's what it's, the essence of what it's saying there.
Yeah.
Not just keeping what you've, retaining it and keeping it safe, but using it to extend it. I'm thinking of the parable of the talents that Jesus talks about in the Gospels, where he gives a number of talents to different people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And the one with 5 talents gets an extra 5 talents, and the one with 2 gets an extra 2, and the one with 1 talent just sticks it in a safe place and doesn't use it, doesn't extend it, doesn't do anything with it. So that seems to be somehow in line with this, that we have to use what we've been given to extend it.
Yeah. Yeah, the Course explicitly says that, almost literally, you know, that however these talents may be different, they will all merge into this one content, you know, of being able to share salvation.
Yeah, calls it abilities.
Right.
Yeah.
So like you know, we used to live with Poppy, that was our roommate, and you and her were very different in your skill set, but you could be joined in this
purpose.
course and in this purpose.
Right. And the purpose, just to go back to here, the purpose is not to contain, but to extend.
Yeah.
Because what is containing but limitation?
Right. That's why it's really important. This may seem kind of nerdy, but is that 6?
Yes.
Look at sentence 6. Being must be extended. Must is it's a modal word. It's a logical word that says this just is the case.
Has to be.
There can't be any other thing happening, and your being must be extended. So then at least I have that in faith to say, here's my true self, and it does extend.
Right.
Whether I'm aware of it or not, it is extending love.
Right. I want to go back.
Yeah.
To make sure that we understand, because we used abilities and talents as a metaphor.
Yeah.
That creating in the Course is not about what the Course calls making. It's not about art or originality or anything like that. It's about the being of God. The creation is what God extends, and that's us. So creation is love. I think that's a good synonym, don't you?
Right. And so in what sentence is that?
5.
So in 5, he's showing us the pragmatic aspect. So he says creating is the opposite of loss. So I am this creator. I've never lost this love. But then the second clause is what gives us the practical application of the truth of our being, in that blessing is the opposite of sacrifice. Now, sacrifice in the Course always means loss.
Always.
and it's always loss of love. So when we give a blessing to a situation,
Mhm.
that's pragmatically how we're reflecting the reality of our being, which
Mhm.
is one with everything.
Right.
So when we bless this, rather than me blaming you because we couldn't do this or couldn't do that, I'm offering a blessing to
Mhm.
that seeming lack of love. And
Right.
that changes everything.
Right.
That's what is practical.
And we might just make a little mental note that the course is going to go into the idea of sacrifice big time when it starts to talk about relationships.
Yeah.
And how the ego's relationships are built on sacrifice.
Yeah.
And loss and bargaining. I want to give something up to get something more. And creation is just the fullness of what I have goes out to the fullness of what you are or what anything is. I really don't know where it goes, how it goes, but knowing that the Holy Spirit is in me is where I start.
That's why the first lesson in the last chapter of those 3 lessons of the Holy Spirit, to have,
Give all to all.
give all to all. That's how I have, not by getting, not by
Mhm.
exploiting, not by managing the situation or
Yeah,
thinking more clever,
right.
right?
Yeah, that's
That's
right.
how I have, is if I acknowledge that true being in you,
Mhm.
then I've acknowledged it in myself.
Right.
But if I deny it in you, I'm denying it to myself.
Right.
And that becomes this practical awareness that I can use. I can see, I've denied you your reality. How could anything mean anything?
Right. Laura, would you read 3, please, and give us your comment?
Yeah, and I was just going to make one comment too.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, just about the conversation and extending. You have to extend. Is I'm not sure exactly where I have this concept, but my understanding is where we get to a place of really being, that it kind of just automatically extends, right? Because I'm just in the being. So things flow in and out, and there is no thought to, so that's kind of like the ideal of when I'm really being the peace of God. And that's kind of like what we're all trying to get to or attain. And I just, for whatever reason, I just had this idea of like, it's not even work at that point because you're just being. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but
Yeah,
it's just kind of, yeah.
It absolutely, it's just like when you look at a little baby and you see that brightness in their eyes and they're just a little infant and they're cooing, you can't help but love that little baby.
they are just pure being.
Yeah. And it's like you say, it's like automatic, when we stand on the innocence of ourselves.
Yeah, and I think that when events in our lives flow, like you were talking about, that's the reflection in true perception of the being. So, all we're asked to do by the course is to go from false perception, which is unforgiveness and separation, to true perception, which is being willing to see the Christ in the other person, choosing peace and all of that. When we make that forgiveness transition from false perception to true perception, with the help of the Holy Spirit, it's the only way we can do it, then the reflection of the truth shows up for us. I'm not sure, but I think this section is telling us about the truth, which is beyond perception. I'm not sure, because I've been struggling with this section for 40 years. So some of us take some parts of the course and run with it, and some of us say, I'll get that later.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you live it, honey. You do this all the time.
Yeah, but I'm just saying this section to me seems to be talking about the last step, the part which is beyond perception.
Right.
That's how it seems to me, and I'll use that as a hypothesis as we go through. And it is helpful for me to hear how you all are taking this, because you see it from different angles, and that helps me. So,
No,
oh, sorry. Go ahead, Connie.
No, I was just going to say, this section, thank you for saying that, Jan. And this section for me, it keeps reminding me of the introduction,
Yeah.
removing the blocks to love.
Right.
Yeah.
And this whole section to me is about removing the major block.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Go ahead, Laura.
I was just going to say that, you only have to get just one lesson completely and you're there. So don't worry about it. No problem.
That's
Just
right.
skip it.
Do your best and move on.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Okay. We're on 3, right?
Yes.
Paragraph 3. Okay. The extension of God's being is spirit's only function. Its fullness cannot be contained any more than can the fullness of its creator. Fullness is extension. The ego's whole thought system blocks extension and thus blocks your only function. It therefore blocks your joy so that you perceive yourself as unfulfilled. Unless you create, you are unfulfilled. But God does not know unfulfillment, and therefore you must create. You may not know your own creations, but this can no more interfere with their reality than your unawareness of your spirit can interfere with its being. So it almost sounds like worst case scenario, you create even if you hadn't found the course somehow,
Yeah.
because that's God's will, right?
Yeah.
What really stands out to me is that it's like the ego's one function is to block our only function. And, it's got a whole toolkit of the way it does that, but it kind of explains all of the human condition and all of the things that come from fear is because we're not aligned with our true function and our will, which we don't realize is really God's will. And therefore that's kind of this kind of vicious circle, right?
Right.
So the more that we're distracted and blocked or allowed to be blocked, the more that we don't create. And so we're unhappy. And so then we keep trying to do things to fix things in form, or we may produce projections that we then try to fix and form because we know we're not aligned. There's something in us that knows that there's something missing. There's something I don't have. And that's what causes sometimes these projections and that kind of thing. And the other thing that comes to me in this paragraph about God still wants you to create and you may not know your own creations. There's another teacher I listened to, Jan, I think you're familiar, Earl Purdy.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, just because you don't understand or agree with the truth doesn't mean the truth is not the truth. It's still the truth. So, there's this thing God doesn't need you to agree for it to be true. So just move along. Yeah. So it just reminded me of that as well. It's even if I don't understand that I'm creating and I don't need, I guess, to understand everything I'm creating or every miracle that happens, right? I just take that on faith and trust.
Yeah. And it's going on whether we are aware of it or not.
Yeah, that was really good. For me, what's so loving about the Course is the Holy Spirit comes to us, God comes to us in a form, and it says to us, right, that this is unreal. There's no such thing as loss. This is unreal. But then it doesn't stop there.
Yeah.
Right. It says, bless this situation.
Yeah.
And then you will see in your experience that you're not separate from love if you offer a blessing.
Right.
And that stops me from needing to manage other people or manage the situation and all that. And I know that I'm lacking inside. I really believe that I'm lacking inside. And so love says to you, okay, lack is unreal. However, you believe in it.
Yeah.
So let's work with that and change that belief. And that's what he talks about in the mind. There's this inner sanctuary where false beliefs are corrected. And you
Mhm.
give those false beliefs,
Mhm.
like I'm not a body. You
Right.
give those false beliefs. I am as you created me.
I am eternal.
I can't be separate. But then we have to specifically find some way to bless ourselves
Right.
by blessing others.
Right.
I mean, that just keeps coming back, right? If you bless others, you will be blessed.
Exactly. So I can really relate to that where it says the ego's whole thought system blocks extension or blocks love, blocks the connection with other people, and thus blocks your only function and therefore blocks your joy. Right? Now that is very practical.
Yeah. It says, go ahead.
I was just going to say that sentence 5 really stood out to me. It's an understatement. It reminds me of how Tim says, how do you feel, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'll tell you.
Yeah.
Well, let's go on to 4 with Dale.
Okay. 4, the kingdom is forever extending because it is in the mind of God. You know, I was listening to all of you talk, and this kind of carries over to that thought. For years, and I don't know where I got this idea that I thought I had to understand the mind of God.
Yeah.
And it's just become very clear to me, I can't, in a human form, understand the mind of God. That's what the Holy Spirit is for, is to do that work for us and quit trying to solve everything by wherever I got the idea that with God, I can solve everything in form, which in fact, I can't. And I think for me, I've just had to get to such a point where I'm so frustrated trying to do that I just let it go. I just let it go. And that's kind of going back to you just let go, let God, the thing we've heard. But there is a lot of truth in that.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
There is a lot of truth in it.
Yeah.
You do not know your joy because you do not know your own self-fullness. Again, that goes back, I think my little mantra is when I get in that place that I am as God created me. And if I am as God created me, whoever is irritating the hell out of me in that moment, God created them too.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, you know, kind of let that go. And I do feel a sense of peace when I do that. What I'm trying to do is to get what Timothy, I think you mentioned, we have to find our own triggers. I'm trying to find things that are simple that get me in that place quickly. Otherwise, it winds up in a series of always trying to do the right, think you have to do the right thing. And it's really, you know, it's coming down to just let Holy Spirit do it. Get yourself quickly as you can in that place where you realize who you are and whoever everybody else is, and just let Holy Spirit do it. Exclude any part of the kingdom from yourself, and you are not whole. Well, that's what we've been talking about, but I tell you, that's really hard to do sometimes. And it all comes down to the same thing to me, of the same little mantra I just told you that I use to put myself in a place, regardless of what's appearing before me in form. I know it's not real. Although it may appear real, it really is. The only reality is God. And some things are just much more difficult to do than others. We all have our things.
Yeah.
Prior learning are much more difficult to do.
Yeah.
A split mind cannot perceive its fullness and needs the miracle of its wholeness to dawn upon it and heal it. This reawakens the wholeness in it and restores it to the kingdom because of acceptance of wholeness. That's the same ideas that we've been talking about, of we are as God created us, so nothing can be excluded. The full appreciation of the mind's self-fullness makes selfishness impossible and extension inevitable.
Good to know.
I understand to make selfishness impossible, although sometimes I feel that I do get that part of it. The revelation for me today is being that God is extending whether we know it or not.
Uh-huh.
But
Yeah, that's the big thing I've taken away from today. And it's very helpful to understand that, because sometimes at the end of the day, I know we all have this experience. We think, well, what have we done today to really
Uh-huh.
center ourselves, or to extend or do something better for the world? And it's comforting to me, I guess is a word I'd choose, to know that just by me staying in that place and extending, allowing Holy Spirit, that I have done something, even though it may not be evident yet.
Yeah.
That is why there is perfect peace in the kingdom. Spirit is fulfilling its function, and only complete fulfillment is peace. And that goes back to what Laura said, is that God, it just is. And when you get in that place, or be able to reach that place quickly, there's nothing more to do, because God is just expressing it's himself perfectly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And recognize that God is what we are. We are part of God. So
Yeah.
that's true for everybody.
Yes.
Thank you, Dale.
You know, when you were talking, Ramakrishna, who used to be a non-dualist, I think he was commenting on marriages or whatever, but he said there was a philosopher guy who was trying to boil a potato or something. And so he turns on the heat and the water starts bubbling over. And so since he's a philosopher, he's praying to God, what do I do? What do I do? And his wife comes in and says, turn down the heat. You know, like some simple little thing just focuses you back in.
So how does that connect with what we were just reading? I get the potato story, but
Well, it's what, you know, that's what the ego is trying to do, is prevent us from an experience of love. And the way that it does it is say, you know what to do. The ego is telling you, you know they're the problem.
go into your head and figure it out.
Yeah, go figure this out, because they're the problem. You know, and that's where it's got to be cut off right there. You know, that can't be. So we need others in our lives to witness
Yeah,
to who we truly are.
Right.
Just as we are witnessing,
right.
when we witness the truth of who they are, they will witness back to us the truth of who we are. And we need without extension, there is no love.
Yeah. You know, that's the essence of the holy relationship. We offer that godliness to everyone, and some of them will witness it back to us.
Yeah.
And it says, you will see that happening when you're willing to see your brother sinless. Holy relationships happen when we're willing to see others sinlessness. So take the scales off my eyes, and I'll see truly, and some will have the scales off theirs. Any other thoughts about paragraph 4? Well,
Line
then,
5.
What's
Is it line 5? Oh, no, excuse me, it's 3. Exclude any part of the kingdom from yourself and you are not whole. I used to think that meant that every ego, disgusting whatever that I came up with was supposed to be included in the kingdom. And I would think that that it would be so far out of reach for me to get that, you know, because I couldn't wrap my mind around like what's going on in Afghanistan. You know, how do I include that in the kingdom and stuff? And it just dawned on me when you were reading this that those are my illusions, and there's not kingdom at all, you know. And for some reason, it's just like my ego had been disguising a lot of the different things that I am aware of, you know, especially watching the news and stuff like that, and thinking that I was supposed to somehow incorporate that into peace. And it's just my reaction to a fact that's going on, but it has nothing to do with the kingdom at all. I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody,
It
but
absolutely does.
it just kind of like opened my heart a little bit, you know.
that's great.
Yeah.
That's just like today's lesson. Whatever suffers is not a part of me.
Yeah.
Whatever. Sorry. That's it. And go ahead.
I mean, that's kind of what we've been talking about, is my first step here has to be discernment. discrimination between the real and the unreal. I mean, that's such a big part of the spirituality
Right.
I mean, across all different systems. What's the nature of reality? You know, is it, but just our ability, even just our wish to say no to the ego is enough
Right.
to let the Holy Spirit do, you know.
Right.
But that's the step we have to take.
Right.
And like he said, and to give all to all, that's the first step that you need to take. What seems to be just yourself all alone,
Right.
if you've got to make this step that says, this can't be real.
Yeah.
And if I give the wholeness of being to the situation, that's what I will have.
Right.
That's how I have, not
Right.
by exploiting or managing or all of that ego stuff.
Right.
That just makes us more
Mhm.
fearful.
Right. It does.
Yeah.
I used to think
I'm
that my
sorry.
discernment, a lot of times, it would be my reaction that my reaction to stuff would be how important I thought it was. You know, if I hear something that's completely disgusting and my reaction is explosive, I think that that's really important.
Yeah.
Whether or not, it's just, you know what anyway.
Oh, yeah. I think we can all relate to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just coming clear.
Like
Yes, I was-
It's like
Sorry.
Dale said, that simple, let go, let God.
Yeah.
Sorry, somebody was going to say
Laura.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't know, Kathy, if it helps you, but I mean, the couple things that I've been working on is like, one, that the people involved in all of these things are responsible themselves as well.
Yeah.
And there's really no victims. So I know it's really hard when you think about, you know, children being abused or human trafficking, but there is something that the Course says fundamentally, not like, and as Jan would say, not like to blame, but that does not come into form without that person having some responsibility for it. So it's not looking at it like, oh, well, they wanted to have a war, so whatever, but it's just that it's not like there's no victims, I guess is the point. There's just no victims. As at some level, we're responsible for the bad things that happen in form to us in the same way that we're responsible for the good things that happen in form to us. So I don't know if that helps.
Thank you.
Yeah. And by our holding on to the truth of those children, or, you know, the women in Afghanistan or whatever, holding on to the truth of who they are, not the pain and the sorrow and all of the disaster, all of the lack. Don't hold that as true. Hold on to the truth in them. That is offering them a miracle. And it's up to the Holy Spirit to take that to them and to help them to experience it in form. That's not our business, but our business is to let go of ego thinking, which is joining with them in their pain. You know, whatever suffers is not a part of me. It's not a part of them either. And we heal ourselves and them by remembering what is true.
You know, it's my constant experience. I know you don't want us to talk too much about us, but it's my constant experience with you that we have different ideas about certain things. And my mind's going, I don't know how I'm going to ever resolve these differences and how she's thinking and I'm thinking. But my constant experience is if I just let that go and I give it to the Holy Spirit, it does work out.
It works out. And
somehow.
Yeah.
It just, and that's our experience.
As soon as we stop, you know, elbowing each other, we say, oh, I think that other person was right.
Yeah. Right. It's not like we're competitive or anything.
No.
Of course not. We're not competitive.
We don't have any ego.
No, we've been free of that for years.
Nope. Okay, let's see. Leanne, are you ready for 5?
I think so.
Did you have another bike ride this morning?
Yeah, I didn't time myself quite right. So.
Oh, that's okay. How many miles did you go?
I just did 22 this morning. So.
Wow.
But it was a perfect day to do 27. But I'm like, oh, I got to get back for class. So I'll save up some energy for a walk tonight.
Save up some energy after 22 miles. Okay. Thank you.
Before I read talking about how the ego gets on that last conversation. I had two situations in this last week. My ex granddaughter, so when you divorce someone, you lose the grandkids,
Yeah.
from a long time ago. She was 21, she passed away. And I haven't had any interaction with her probably in 15, 16, 17 years. And on that same night, a friend of mine, so that was a couple of Fridays ago, a friend of mine lost her daughter who I'd never met, who was in her 20s, both unexpectedly. I don't know what happened to either one of them, but the ego certainly wanted to be, especially with the ex-family situation. It's like, oh, I need to reach out to them and I need to go to the funeral and I need to do this. And I'm like, I had to stop and say, who do you think you are? Really, like, but it was very, I was able to identify that it was actually the ego thinking that if I show up, that I'm going to be there, like everybody's going to run to me, go, oh, Leanne, we're so happy you're here. No, they probably don't want, so I had to really sit with that because, I wanted to go and pay my respects.
Yeah.
But why did I want to go to pay my respects? I couldn't find peace with that. So I didn't go. I sat with Holy Spirit and I prayed and I offered up, however Holy Spirit needs to intervene. So anyways, I just wanted to share that because that was an interesting experience for me of like, do I think I'm the hero of this situation? I don't know if I'm articulating this correctly, but
Oh, absolutely.
it really put me into some deep spiritual thought about things.
That's exactly where discernment, she said, who do I think I am?
Yeah.
Like, how am I seeing myself?
Yeah.
Becomes accessible to us in that very moment.
Right.
We can see what the mind's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I decided, the best thing to do was to stay home and, just hold them in prayer.
Yeah.
The best thing for everybody else, it was a little hard for me to make that decision because I kind of wanted to be there. But anyways, I just wanted to share that before I read.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your creations are protected for you because the Holy Spirit who is in your mind knows of them and can bring them into your awareness wherever you let him. They are there as part of your being because your fulfillment includes them. The creations of every son of God are yours, since every creation belongs to everyone being created for the sonship as a whole. Your creations are protected for you because the Holy Spirit. Well, maybe that paragraph just kind of explains what I did for those families that I chose not to go to the funerals because I didn't, it wasn't my place to be there. But my love was there.
Yeah.
Because, love is universal and it's all in all of us. Let's see, they are there as, I don't know. I don't really know what that paragraph says. I'll just be honest. It doesn't, the section, what we're discussing, the concept, the course concept makes total sense to me, but that paragraph, I'm not sure adds much value to me personally.
Okay. Anyone else?
Let me just say on that first sentence, that's what we've been talking about. So if you go back to this part where in chapter 2, what sentence is that? 6. Being must be extended.
Yeah.
So we have to accept on faith what the course is saying is that this is already happening. The truth of your being, the truth of God has not been interfered with. This is happening. All you're doing in this practice is you're not making it happen. You're just bringing it into your awareness, right? And that's what the course is saying is all spirituality is just to limit the time that you're in this illusion.
Shorten time.
Right? That however much time it takes for you to become aware of what's already there, that's our choice.
I think it's very interesting that it says in that first sentence, the Holy Spirit can bring our creations into our awareness. whenever we'll let him. So I must have been doing this because I am making progress in the course. So I must have been doing this. You know what? I got stuck on something that says somewhere else where it says your creation, you can't understand creation from this point of view. So I always thought, oh, I can't understand it. So I'm blocking my awareness of what creation is.
Well, that's the lesson. All things are echoes of the voice for God, right? It's literally saying there, if you do give your thoughts to the Holy Spirit will give you back a miracle,
Mhm.
which isn't just generic. It's very specific to the situation.
Uh-huh.
So like, I mean, death and physical illness, those become the big temptations.
Yeah.
Those seem so very real, death
Mhm.
and suffering and cancer and those things. But that's where we can stand up and
Yeah.
claim our power.
Right.
You know, but we just have to be able to say no to the ego
Right.
because it's lying to us.
Right.
I mean, lying is more than just a mistake. It's a very intentional,
Right.
organized, delusional thought system.
That's what the ego is. The
Right.
big lie.
Right.
I have a question. What is creation again? Can you define it? Is it the same as extension?
Well, again, he's always saying that language and concepts really can't capture reality.
Yeah.
And that we kind of know that our experiences often are way beyond our concepts or language, but that experience of peace
Mhm.
is how we know we're on track.
You know, yes, the experience of peace. And I'll tell you, that question has come up in course classes forever. What is creation? And the best we can say is it is reality, or it is love, or it is God's movement outward.
So I take this as meaning that those are always, which I believe, those are always there for me, available,
That's right.
connected to God, but I don't even know it sometimes. So that what it's saying here is all those are protected and being held by Holy Spirit.
Right on.
Even
That's
though
it.
I may not be, what is it, awake
Aware.
enough to see them, aware, right?
Yes.
They're still there and they're
But-
being held in what's that word?
Perpetuity.
Perpetuity for me.
Right. So that's where so that's what, to me, again, what's so loving about the Course is it says this is unreal.
Right.
This is just doesn't exist, but you do believe in it. And since you do believe in it, we have to correct that belief.
Yep.
And so we give ourselves a new belief. I am as God created me.
Yeah.
You are as God created me. But then we've blessed, like it says, your blessing on the situation is what makes the sense of loss go away. Because now I've blessed the situation. Now I have this experience of being a loving being.
Mm-hmm.
Now
Right.
I know that peace.
Right.
I mean, we wouldn't be doing this unless we've had those experiences constantly.
Yeah. Kathy, can you read 6 for us and give us your thoughts on it?
Sure. You have not failed to increase the inheritance of the sons of God, and thus have not failed to secure it for yourself. So I didn't screw it up for everybody else, huh? Since it was the will of God to give it to you, he gave it forever. Since it was his will that you have it forever, he gave you the means for keeping it, and you have done so. Okay. Disobeying God's will is meaningful only to the insane. In truth, it is impossible. I find that extremely comforting.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's like, yeah, your self-fulfillment is as boundless as God. Like his, it extends forever in perfect peace. Its radiance is so intense that it creates imperfect joy, and only the whole can be born of its wholeness.
Mm-hmm.
So all this wonderfulness is inside of me once I'm ready to look at it.
Yeah.
Yep.
and the wonderfulness of everybody else.
Mhm. When its radiance is so intense, it creates imperfect joy. Ooh.
It doesn't seem like it's telling us of a self that's quite different from the self-concept we have.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's what accepting the atonement for ourselves means, is accepting the self that I am is the fullness, the wholeness of everything God created.
You know, last night we had guests over for dinner, and we had dinner with retreatants. And as an old course student we've known from long ago in Tucson, and just that. So he was talking a lot about geopolitical problems of Israel and the Middle East and all of that. And you know, the thought that came to me in that is like, we can look at the world in that way, you know, where it seems to be as awful as it is. But if we recognize that really what's happening for us at that moment is
Yeah.
we're coming from our guilt. And that's why there's no order of difficulty in miracles, because I can heal my sense of loss of love and the guilt that attends it right now.
Right.
I can do that. Let there be peace and let it begin with me.
Yeah.
I can solve this problem of separation
Yeah.
for myself right in this moment.
And if this wholeness is true, and you open up to wholeness by letting go of a belief in conflict and judgment and all that,
Yeah,
you're opening that wholeness up for everybody.
right.
You're shifting the gears.
And I'm not in denial if I say to that it's unreal.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what the ego is going. You're denying the reality of this awfulness. What's wrong with you? Right? But we have to deny that.
Mhm. Yeah, if we want to be joyful, happy, and fulfilled, we have to deny the reality of the ego.
Yeah,
Separation, conflict, judgment,
right.
that whole story.
Timothy,
Yeah.
you said something that I found is very important to me just a minute ago about we can heal it right now. I would add to that a corollary that you have to make the decision that you want to heal it right now, because I found myself thinking, well, next year I'll really get this and I'll be better.
Right.
And 40 years later, I'm going, well, you know, next year I'll get it and I'll be better. What's the matter with right now?
Yeah.
And if we let go of the human aspect that I'm going to understand God's mind and I'm going to understand this, and just say, Holy Spirit, and if there's no magnitude of miracles, a miracle is I want to understand it right now.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's
I mean,
great.
that's the whole basis of the course right there, is that you've denied your true power as a creator,
Mhm.
but you're still free
Mhm.
to decide to see this differently.
Right.
You still have that freedom,
Yeah.
and you can use it right now.
And we can do it
Right
and
now,
the word
like you
now
say.
is great
Yeah.
because it means I don't have to do it for all time. I only have to do it right now.
That's right. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
I think you're on 7, honey.
Okay. Any more comments on anything? Okay. Be confident. So again, I've emphasized this a lot, that the course does a lot of work on showing here's the content of the ego's thought system.
Mhm.
Here's the content of the Holy Spirit. Here's how you feel with the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Here's how you feel with the ego, right? But so that is training us in the mind by showing us content of those thought systems. But here, it's also training us in attitudes.
Uh-huh.
Be confident.
Uh-huh.
You know, that first lesson in part 2, it says, peace to my mind, let all my thoughts be still. And Jesus is saying, I've joined with you in this atonement.
Uh-huh.
Accept my confidence
That's right.
and be confident.
Yeah.
This is going to be healed.
Yeah. And
So-
that's a decision.
That's right. But we're developing attitudes,
Mhm.
confidence, certainty, conviction,
Mhm.
all of those things. So be confident that you have never lost your identity and the extensions which maintain it in wholeness and peace. Miracles are an expression of this confidence. They are reflections of both your proper identification with your brothers and of your awareness that your identification is maintained by extension. Without extension, there can be no love. Look grammatically how he's building on this last section, where we believe I can be alone and I can be without love. Be confident that that's not true. Okay, we have to work on it. So the miracle is a lesson in total perception. By including any part of totality in the lesson, you have included the whole. To have, give all to all. That's how we are fulfilled, in just asserting that identity. And I begin to realize if I deny it to you, I've denied it to myself. And this is what's miraculous. If I find it in one place,
Right.
and it's true forgiveness and love, then I can use it everywhere.
That's that last sentence.
Yeah.
By including any part. So one person that you're unforgiving, that you're not forgiving, include that person as part of the sonship. Any part, including any part of the totality in the lesson, you've included the whole. Well, logically, it makes sense. But what he's saying is, in practical form, when we forgive one person, we've allowed the truth in us to flow out, and that flow out into our awareness. And that means we've included everybody.
Yeah.
For that moment, till we buy into the ego again. But we're learning. I'm getting that miracles, so sentence 2, miracles are an expression of this confidence. So they, meaning miracles. Sentence 3, miracles are reflections of both your proper identification with your brothers. I am one self, united with my creator and with every aspect of creation.
Unlimited.
Unlimited in power and in peace. Yeah. So that's my proper identification with my brothers, and of my awareness that my identification with everyone and everything is maintained by including them, by extending the love of God to them.
Right. Which again, literally, we could not do that if we were in fact an ego in the body.
Right.
The fact that we can overlook this
Mhm.
demonstrates to us that we can't be this body ego. There must be something more.
Yep. Okay. Any final thoughts on this one? It didn't seem so hard reading it with you today.
Yeah.
Thank you.